Oasis v Blur, whatever. Like
Mm,
5 years ago, that would have been an embarrassment. No one would have
mm,
admitted that they were
mm,
deliberately trying to get a number one record. You'd have been looked at like you were
mm.
a complete sellout.
Welcome. We are Neil,
Luke and Dave.
340 somethings, reminiscing on the runners and riders of 90s guitar music.
We look at the bands who soundtracked our youth on both sides of the pond and interview some of our heroes from the bands that defined a generation.
You'll hear about the good, the bad, and the ugly of 90s guitar music.
This podcast is stupid and contagious. All right, episode 82 of the Stupid and Contagious podcast. Having a chat with Miki Berenyi later. That's a good one. That's coming up. But before we get on to that, what's everyone been up to? Dave, horses' arses, what's going on?
Oh, that's finished with. We're not having any problems with that anymore.
Did you go and scratch their arses after that suggestion last week?
No, I just let them. Sorry.
Are you all
Go
right?
on. No, we've put you on the spot, but
I just let them stand there in discomfort.
okay. Well, what else have you got for us?
I've got a bit of a confession to make, actually.
All right.
Here we go.
We had village bingo again on Friday, and I didn't tell Neil.
Oh,
Fucking bastards. You knew that I was going to clean up. I wouldn't have been there anyway. I was down in Bournemouth, but
I should have told you, and then it would have been fine because you couldn't.
How was
come.
it?
Keeping that from me.
No, it was all right. It's just my mum came, so I thought if you came, I'd have,
Yeah,
you'd both be demanding my attention constantly.
sure.
Or she'd be demanding mine. I think she's always had a bit of a thing for me.
Back in the day, she
Don't want-
did, didn't she?
Probably.
What?
She was always giving him the eye. Did you win anything at bingo?
No,
No.
Why?
just I don't know. Maybe I just missed numbers or something, but I didn't win. Didn't come close.
Yeah.
There's big
What?
money on offer.
Mm,
How much are we talking?
Well, just to get one line, you got 22 quid,
That's
not
all
bad.
right.
and the
Yeah.
top prize,
Yeah.
82 quid.
82. It was 50 last
Yeah.
time. Now it's going up.
I know.
Fucking hell.
It's because
No
there are
wonder you're
more
not
people
telling
there,
people
more
about
money.
it.
Mm.
Trying to keep
Mm.
it to
Yeah.
yourself and let that cat out of the bag.
Mm.
I know
Yeah.
I'm going next time.
Who won? Who won the 82?
Some kid, I think.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
good night out, isn't it?
my daughter's friend won it.
There you go. Good on him.
Just spend it on drugs, wouldn't he?
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know what you
Okay.
could get for that
You
nowadays.
go and get a team.
Right.
What's the current price of Coke? Do you know?
Oh, dear.
It's probably good that we don't know, isn't it?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I was more suggesting something on the lighter side, like some pot.
How much is it? How much is a tab of acid? Is
Don't
it more than a
still do it.
fiver?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Do you reckon they still do it? That's
Is that is about that's £5 back in our day, wasn't it?
£5, yeah. You
Yeah.
only needed
Yeah.
half, so £2.50.
Cheap as chips, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That'd sort you out for a good 8 or 9 hours, man. It's amazing.
That's all you needed. And
That's
some
all you needed.
fags
Yeah.
for a pound or whatever they were.
And some orange juice to bring you down. That totally works. Gotta
Yeah.
drink some orange juice to bring you down.
That's it. Yeah, that's gonna work.
That was a myth, wasn't it? It didn't work, did it?
Of course it didn't.
No.
Once you're on it,
No.
you're on it. There
Yeah,
ain't no
you're on
stopping that trip.
I think whiskey's better than orange juice.
Sure.
Whiskey,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Yeah. So that's the Berwick news, I guess. Luke,
Mm.
what have you been up to? Oh, you've been out gigging again, haven't you?
I have indeed.
Saw
Went to
that.
see CJ Wildheart last night in Shibuya.
Mm.
That's great. Yeah, good
Yeah, it looked
rock and
good.
roll, straight ahead rock and roll. It's brilliant. Yeah.
You didn't meet up with him afterwards, though.
No,
us
I
down.
didn't. I apologise. Yeah, it wasn't really that kind of atmosphere in there. It's good though, man. It's great.
Oh.
Lots of old rockers in leather jackets. And it's brilliant.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did have a few things to say about the Wild Art Zone. He said this thing like he apologised for what happened on stage the last time they played in Tokyo. I didn't
Alright.
explain what happened, but he I wonder what that was.
What? demanded an apology, so it must have been something.
Yeah, I think they must have been fighting with each other or something, I guess, right? Yeah, but it's good they say, like, as I said in the Facebook post, he played like his own stuff. He played Honey Crack, Jellies, and then finished off with like 4 or 5 Wild Heart songs at the end. So it wasn't like being precious about it, you know. It wasn't
No.
like some people might, you know. It's great.
Mm.
Yeah, really good.
Who was he playing with? What's his band
What do you mean?
called? Was he playing with a band?
He's like Brian Adams. He doesn't give his band name. Yeah, he's just CJ
I
Wildheart.
don't think he's like Brian Adams, though, is he?
He's exactly.
I don't think he'll
like Brian
appreciate
Adams.
that.
Sorry, CJ. They were good though, man. They looked like they were into it, man. They were jumping in unison at the end of the song, like, you know, like guitarists do. They kind of jump
Oh,
up at the
nice.
same time. They did that like 3 or 4 times. That was great.
Yeah, if you get that
Yeah.
wrong, you look stupid. So it's a risky one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's great.
Oh, good.
And I might be in a video. He made us kind of wave our arms in the air while someone was filming. He said he was going to use it in his next video. So
You're going to be
I
in
might
something
be, yeah.
else.
Well, I probably won't because I'm too short to be seen over the crowd. But I might be.
When
Yeah.
we were on the way up to watch Smash the other week, I played Dave the "You've Been Misled" bit in the live
Did you hear
that
me, Dave?
you're on.
Yeah,
He did.
It's
he picked
definitely
you up.
me, wasn't it?
it is definitely
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
no one talks like you.
No,
Exactly.
definitely.
Exactly.
It's your stupid little voice. Definitely.
Sure.
Yeah, so
Sure.
you're always popping up in videos and live recordings, aren't you?
Yeah, that was
You do.
before his voice broke, wasn't it?
Fuck off. I was 17 or something by then. So maybe you're right. I was a late developer, I'll give you that. Neil, what you been up to?
I think I'm doing a lot of work on the van this week, just trying to get stuff done. I feel like I've turned a corner, getting to the electrics and all that stuff. Yeah,
Have you
it's a lot of
electrocuted
work.
yourself yet?
I haven't started it yet. I'm just planning
Oh.
it. But
How's it
I
looking?
don't think I will. Well, still
You will.
like a workshop at the moment. It's still not looking like much, but I've done all the carpeting and stuff, so it's getting there. But also, I don't know why, but I've just been listening to a lot of Placebo this week. Getting back into some of that. They had some good stuff, didn't they, back in the day? Still
Did
going.
they?
They're still going strong, I think.
Yeah.
I think even you liked the first album, didn't you?
I did. Although I think we talked about it. It's one of the worst gigs I've ever been to. In
Oh, yeah, you did say,
Bristol.
yeah.
Yeah, it was terrible. It's just really boring.
And you've seen Chumbawamba, so that's saying something.
And I've seen exactly. It was bad.
But when you say it was boring, wasn't it just you're in a bad mood for some reason?
We don't get bad.
How could it be? How could they mess up a gig that much?
I
That's what I'm
know.
asking.
To be honest, like the venue wasn't ideal. It was like in this old theatre, so most people were sitting down. So that was a bit weird. Yeah, I don't know. It just wasn't very good.
You do get those
basically.
gigs. I think you do get those gigs. It's like when that Soul Asylum one that I always talk about. It's just so boring. But they were at the top of their game at the time. Crowd atmosphere,
Dave.
someone contributes to it.
Yeah.
Some nights they're just not on it, I guess. Well, the crowd's not into it. Culmination? Is that a word?
It's a word. Depends how you're using it, but go on.
Of the two?
Combination, do you mean?
That's fun.
You were so close there, man.
It's good. I learn a lot each week. Yeah, apart from that, just catching up on work.
I wanted to give another RIP to David Johansen of New York Dolls. Did you see that news?
Yeah.
Did see it, yeah.
Another very influential band. Yeah, last member's gone.
Oh, that's it, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fucked,
Proto-punk.
When whole
Malcolm
bands
McLaren
like
was their manager for a while before he managed the Sex Pistols, you know.
And he's gone. Isn't he? Yeah, that whole age is sort of dying out, isn't it? It's a bit scary.
Yeah. In more positive news, I also wanted to talk about the Beta Band reunion.
Saw that.
I'm pretty excited about.
Shared that yesterday.
But I can't believe when we did our A to M last week, I mentioned King Biscuit Time, which is like the obscure side project of the Beta Band. But I didn't mention Beta Band, which is fucking ridiculous, right?
Yeah, but going back to that whole episode, obviously people have been rinsing us about loads of bands in there that we've missed. And then
really?
that we even speak about regularly, and then we just don't, like Manic Street Preachers. We didn't have them for him.
Mental. I loved seeing everyone else's list though, man. That was great. Those people put their list though, weren't they? Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, put a whole list, spent time putting whole list. I love that. Yeah, that's
me too.
You know, that's what we want to see. Because we're just like what's it called? Conduit. That's not the right word.
Yeah, it's perfect, man. We're the conduit.
That's not the right word, is it? You
it's
know
the
what
word.
I mean?
We're the conduit.
Funneled through you.
It's the conduit.
I don't know.
Oh.
I've got the Crows lyric in my head now. Go on.
We always set the group up to be a bit of a community where people can just share stuff. So it's good to see.
Yeah, those lists are great.
We just start off the conversation, and then everyone else can get involved. This always helps us excuse our forgetting stuff. We can just say, get involved in the comments.
Yeah.
But we've got loads of stuff. I think we did all right though.
Didn't we have a guest from the Beta Band?
No.
Trying.
No.
At some point.
Yeah.
If you listen to the podcast, Dave, you'd know who'd been on.
Yeah, you know who'd been on. Well, now they're back on the media cycle. Maybe to get them on.
Yeah, I'll keep trying. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that'd be good to have her on. But yeah, I saw that as well. So another 90s band on the way back.
I was just I was messaging listener Matt Jammy about this earlier. I think they never fulfilled their promise. The Beta Band the first time round. They didn't quite do what they should have done. I think their albums never quite gelled in the way they should have done. I think they've got like unfinished business to take care of. I do.
There you go.
So
they're taking care of it.
I hope they are. Yeah, and I hope they get new music as well. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. That's what people say about Main Street. Kind of unfinished.
Fucking hell.
You do. You always say that. That's what you've always said.
How you never fulfilled your initial promise.
Yeah.
That's my polite way of saying you were shit.
All right. So should we get into this week's episode? Miki Berenyi of Lush. Should we do it?
Let's fucking do it, man. Yeah.
Dave?
Yeah, let's do it.
If you are watching this, then please do remember to subscribe to the channel. We are sauntering towards the 1,000 subscriber mark on YouTube.
That's a good one.
We are getting there slowly, but surely. Get involved in the comments. Let us know your Lush memories, all that sort of stuff. Give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you're listening to it, again, share it with your friends. Leave us a review. Do all that stuff. It helps the podcast get found. You can sponsor the podcast. You probably won't. But if you did want to, Stupid and Contagious podcast at gmail.com. We'll give you a shout out at the start of the show. Put your link to your band or whatever in the show notes. App, we still need some Android testers, so keep sending those emails to me and I'll pass them on to Dave. But if you've got an iPhone, you can already download the app. It seamlessly takes you from the podcast to the mixtape, so worth doing. Download the app. Right, that's all that stuff. Let's chat about this week's guest, Miki Berenyi of Lush. Well, let's talk about Lush, shall we?
I always thought Lush were from Wales.
Because of the word.
Yeah.
I think
Lush.
Lush. Yeah.
I've got English rock band is the first thing in Wikipedia.
I mean, right. I mean, Shoegaze. Well, we talk about it in an interview, but then did they become Britpop? They're basically a Shoegaze band. Yeah.
Yeah. In the loosest sense of the word, really, I think.
I don't know. They were well. Let's talk about it. So, before I start, we might have to give an Andrew Hickey style trigger warning. Andrew Hickey does the history of rock music in 500 songs. He always gives like a whole minute of like trigger warnings because he talks about all the because everyone in rock and roll is such a complete fucking arsehole, right? But going to be mentioning basically child sexual abuse later. So just a quick trigger warning if that's something that is might be upsetting. That's going to be coming up soon, so just a warning. Basically, the heart of Lush are Miki and Emma. So Miki Berenyi on vocals and guitar, and Emma Anderson also on vocals and guitar. Yeah, today's guest, Miki. So her book, which I'll talk about properly in a minute, fingers crossed, is one of the best rock books I've ever read. So Japanese mother, Hungarian father, born in London. And her mum, Yaska Nagazumi, was like actress, basically.
Okay.
She was in Space 1999. She was in You Only Live Twice.
Oh, right.
She was in
Oh,
It
wow.
Ain't Half Hot Mum. And she was in a Womble spin-off movie called Wombling Free. Have you seen that?
No, I'm going to go and watch it after this.
I have seen You Only Live Twice.
Yeah.
Is she
Yeah.
the one he almost marries?
I don't know. I think she's like in the bath scene, when he's kind of in the Japanese bath and they're kind of doing, whatever.
Rubbing
Oh, that
each
one's
other.
especially racist, right? He kind of passes himself off as Japanese. He almost blacks
Yeah.
up. It's outrageous.
He just wears pajamas. That's how he does it.
Best Bond? Best Bond.
What, actor or film?
No, actor.
Roger Moore for me.
Okay, the 80s Bond.
I'll go Daniel Craig.
Got to be
Neil?
Pierce Brosnan, isn't it?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, why not? Why not?
Timothy Dalton,
I forgot about him.
Living
Yeah.
Daylights. Good film.
Yeah, he's underrated, I think.
I think he's just correctly rated. Very much like us, Miki and Emma met at school when they were 14 at this kind of posh school called Queen's College.
We went
And
out of
yeah,
school.
we weren't at a posh school. No, they were.
Dave
in
would have
London.
liked to have been at a
Yeah, I
posh
know he
school,
would.
But he's
Yeah,
really not happy about being put in Seaford Ed.
with the riffraff.
Mate, I was the riffraff.
Yeah, it's true.
He had
It's
an
true.
anchor earring.
Exactly. Don't get more tough than that.
I came from the ghettos of Alfriston.
It's true. It's true.
Did.
Hanging out, listening to music. I had a fanzine called Alphabet Soup, and they were in different bands. So Emma was in a band called the Rover Girls. Miki was in a band called the Bugs, and then they started a band called Baby Machines, 5-piece with Miki and Emma. Bassist called Steve and drummer called Chris Ackland. And thanks to listener John, who I was chatting to at the weekend, he told me
Thanks,
that at the
John.
same time, John Bates, cheers. Chris, the drummer, played in a band called Hardskin. Do you know them? They're like
Don't think so.
they were like an oi band, but I don't know. I never worked out if they were like a parody or not. I don't think they were, but they were like a 90s oi band, pretending they were like an early 80s kind of oi.
What's an oi band?
It's like punk rock. It's like skinhead punk rock, basically. Oi, come on. So, for example, I was listening through a few tracks, and they had a track called Copper Cunt or Cunt Copper. I can't remember which way round it is.
What's that a love song?
Yeah. So that was really interesting, though, because I know the band, but I had no idea that he was in them. And his name in Hardskin was Nosha.
Nice.
Nosha.
Do you
Yeah.
remember Oizone?
Yeah.
That's a novel idea, wasn't it?
Singing Boyzone songs in an oi style.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the name probably came first. They just worked it from around that, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not hard, is it? Once you've come up with the concept, it is what it is, isn't it?
Sure. Yeah. Although Hardskin, of course, were anti-fascist. They were none of that kind of fascist skinhead nonsense. Anyway, so 5-piece. So there was also a singer called Muriel Barham, who was a singer at first. And they changed the name to Lush in 87 or 88. And started playing gigs. First gig at the Camden Falcon. But shortly after they did that, the Muriel left. I think she was kicked out. And she later joined Pale Saints, who were pretty
Oh, yeah, I
big
remember
band.
them. Yeah.
So they were without a singer, tried out a few people, couldn't find anyone. So Miki took over as the lead singer.
Which sounds mad now, doesn't it? Because it's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, basically Miki and Emma write all of the songs, sometimes separately, sometimes together. But yeah, they're the band pretty much. Yeah. Signed to 4AD. She talks about it in the interview, but yeah, basically, they came to see them playing at the Falcon and signed them straight away. And they were basically one of the first bands to be called Shoegaze, to be given that label. Because this was like 88, 89. Like, if people think of like Shoegaze as like, My Blood and Valentine and Loveless and all of that, which is like 91. So they were, My Bloody Valentine were also releasing stuff, but they, one of the first bands to be called Shoegaze, basically.
I find the word shoegaze really annoying.
It's annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really sort of derogatory, I think.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit like you're not putting any effort in. You're just sort of bored almost.
And,
which is
I guess it's referring to the fans, right?
No, it's the band.
No, it's just referring to the band
not
standing there, not moving, staring at their
looking
shoes.
at their shoes, gazing at their shoes, which I don't think Lush ever did, right? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say, like, especially if you watch some of those videos, but the videos are quite vibrant and fun. I don't, not shoegazy at all.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I think like I think it was supposed to be derogatory. I think it was Enemy taking the piss. They used to call it the scene that celebrates itself. I think they even like shortened it like STCI because they were just trying to. I think they're just being like snobbish about them, basically, just because they, they were just nice to each other. It's nonsense. Yeah. So bought out a mini album called Scar in 1989, 6 tracks. Thought Forms was like the kind of the breakthrough song on there, which is a brilliant song, really good. Basically, lots of layering of guitars and distortion and stuff like that. Started touring with Pale Saints again with Loop, who I've been listening to a lot lately. Loop, really fucking good, man. Really good. Again, only discovered through this podcast, but really good. And Darling Buds, who've got a few mentioned over the last few weeks for some reason. Touring with him.
Yeah. Apparently a gigantic thing, aren't they? Darling Buds.
Yeah. So that is a Welsh band, Dave. They are properly Welsh.
Thanks.
Put out a compilation album of singles and stuff, and then their first album came out in 91 called Spooky. Hit number 7 on the charts. It's pretty high, isn't it?
It's all right, isn't it? Yeah, it's pretty good. Especially back then, you had to sell more records to get in the chart.
Miki describes it as hit and miss. I don't know, man. It was produced by Robin Guthrie from Cocteau Twins, recent guests.
Okay.
And it sounds like it, basically.
I was going to say that. Definitely got a Cocteau Twins feel to the music.
Yeah, so I think that influence is pretty strong in it. And I went back and read a couple of like contemporaneous reviews, and one NME and one Rolling Stone, and they both said the same thing, that they weren't themselves. They didn't really see who Lush were. They were too much subsumed, I think, by Robin's production, which I think is possibly fair. Around this time, the bassist Steve Rippon left, and the new guy Phil King came in, and also and she writes about it a lot in the book, and we talk about it in the interview, but they went on the second ever Lollapalooza tour in 1992. And she writes about it a lot. And so this is the lineup in order. Red Hot Chili Peppers as headliners, then Ministry, Ice Cube, Soundgarden, Jesus and Mary Chain, Pearl Jam, and then Lush as the openers. And it's like almost a year Lollapalooza, right? Just going around America in these huge fucking stadiums.
I remember that Lollapalooza thing. It was huge.
And by then, like Pearl Jam, like 10 had come out, and Pearl Jam were massive, but they were only second on the bill, below the Jesus and Mary Chain, right? Which is mad.
That's a weird one.
Well, she talks about it in the book, and apparently, like Eddie was just refused to go up the bill. He said that's what we agreed, and that's what we're going to do. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Oh, good man.
I'd like to have gone on that Lollapalooza tour. I didn't get invited.
All right, wasn't it? You weren't invited. No.
I would have gone.
Yeah,
I would have.
Sure. Sure, but she talks about it in the book, out of that list of bands, however many members, so like Mickey and Emma were the only two women out of however many 30 people or whatever are in that, make up those bands. So,
Yeah.
But were there any relationships within the band?
no,
ABBA style?
no,
Oh,
not
come
that
on.
I know of.
Obsessed with that
I
one.
can't remember. I don't think so. No, I don't think
Well,
so.
it'd be in the book, wouldn't it, if there was?
Yeah, I can't remember. I read it last year. I don't think so. Although she did say that during that tour, sometimes she joined Pearl Jam on stage to do "Keep on Rocking in the Free World" on guitar.
Oh, amazing.
Mickey
Oh,
did.
that's-
Yeah,
Love that song.
yeah, man. How good would that be?
Yeah. Again, I would have done that if they'd have asked, but I didn't ask.
They didn't. No, it's weird, isn't it?
Mm.
The fact that you were a 15-year-old loser in Seaford, it's probably something to do with it.
A lolloping
Yeah.
loser.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about it in the interview, but yeah, lots of kind of sexist bullshit. As she says, mainly from crew members rather than from band members. But yeah, it was a crazy ride. Yeah.
Even now, I don't think it's changed that much. It's a very male orientated sort of. All the crew is
Yeah.
generally males, isn't it? It's must be quite intimidating.
Fucking males.
But yeah, you have to buy the book to read about it. But basically, it ends up with Mickey having 15 stitches, which is rock and roll, baby.
You're not going
Yeah.
to tell us. You're not going
You have
to
to
tell
buy
us
the book.
story.
Yeah.
I don't read, do I? You
Um,
know I don't read.
I keep. Okay, I will read it. I'll read that part to you. Okay, we'll have a
Like
bedtime story.
That'd be
Yeah,
nice.
yeah, we'll do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
All right.
15
Um,
stitches, though. What a gash that would
Yeah.
have been.
Fuck, man.
How many?
That's
What's the
pretty
most stitches
hardcore,
you've
innit?
had?
Me, I've had
Well,
quite a
both of
few.
you.
I think I've had
What's the
6.
most in one
Here
go?
twice. I've had
I've had one
here,
there as well.
and I've had here. There's
I got
three
surfboards
places
in
on
the
my
chin
face.
in Australia.
Oof. Mm. Yeah.
Probably 5
My
stitches.
one, I tried to cartwheel over a brick wall, and I caught it. Yeah.
Stupid, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dave,
I was doing a jump on my BMX.
what,
Oh,
what's,
man.
what's your stitch tally?
Count.
2.
Two. Luke, what's your stitch count? Mine was
I don't know.
5,
This was
I
probably
reckon.
like 4 or 5. Then I got
Yeah, around
2
5.
here, and maybe
Oh,
3
right,
or 4.
you're
I'm probably
totaling
like
it.
I'm nearly 10, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah, I've got a
totaled,
few.
yeah. Easy. 10.
This lip one was the worst. I don't remember. I was too young, but we had like this Morris Minor, and my sister closed the boot of it onto my lip. Imagine those big old heavy fucking Morris Minor, man.
Fucking hell.
I know.
Why were you
You've still
eating the
got that
car?
scar, haven't you?
No, I was just taking something out, just pulling my head away, and she closed it, and it just caught the
I've
lip.
still got that scar, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Oh,
I
what?
do. Yeah.
One of mine was after the A team, I used to get pretty excited.
Sure,
I
we all
was
did.
just running around the room and just smacking my head on a bookshelf, dashed it open.
Pity the fool. So, second album, Split, came out in 1994. And get this, it was originally going to be produced by Bob Mould.
Oh,
But
trying to get him on.
yeah, but
Yeah.
but it wasn't.
That's a good story.
Couldn't work out the schedules. Yeah. Yeah, in the end, it's recorded by Mark Hedges at Rockfield Studios in Wales. Dave, Wales is part of it, but it didn't sound very good. So they got Alan Moulder from My Bloody Valentine and Ride and stuff to remix it. It's a much darker album. I think the sound's darker and the content is darker. So there's a tune on it, Kiss Chase, which is basically about child sexual abuse, which Miki suffered. She writes about it a lot in the book, and basically her grandma who lived with her in London, her Hungarian grandmother, sexually abused her from a young age, as well as like her dad's friends and stuff. This really fucking awful stuff, basically. Yeah. But she writes about it really openly and honestly, and she writes about it in the song here. Also Light from a Dead Star, I think, is probably my favorite track on there. Again, it's about like how fucked up her family is.
That's a
basically,
great name for a song, that.
It's a good name for a song. Yeah, Light from a Dead Star.
Star.
Yeah,
You like that darkness, don't you now?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all ticking all the boxes.
So, like a lot of bands, basically they're getting fucked up by their management who haven't got a clue what they're doing. So, the management's trying to get them to break America. They toured with Weezer, although they're doing better in America than they did in the US, in the UK. But for example, it's like she talks about it, like they only played like 8 gigs to promote the whole album in the UK, which is ridiculous, right? It's just like the record company fucking up, basically. But we're at 94 by now, right? So Britpop is taking off, and Miki is in the center of it because her boyfriend's like part of a PR company called Savage and Best, not managing, but dealing with Suede, Blur, Elastica, The Verve, Menswear, Marion, Powder, Long Pids, Ultrasound, Auteurs, Black Box Recorder, etc., etc. So she was right at the heart of all of it. And we talk about it in the interview, but she fucking hated Britpop. We'll talk about it after. But third album in March 1996, Love Life, and well, according to some people, Lush go Britpop. Big hits from there, Ladykillers, which we talk about in the interview, but partly about Anthony Kiedis.
I'd kind of forgotten about that song, and then
I
did a binge on Lush before this. I remembered it instantly. Obviously, it's a good song. I know a lot of people say they sold out a little bit with that song and stuff. It's a good pop tune, right? It's just really good.
It's great.
I like it.
So if you listen to the second verse, it says, "Hey you, the muscles and the long hair, telling me that women are superior to me."
Yeah,
which is directly about that.
No, it's a really good song. It's a really good song.
You got 500 in brackets, Shake Baby Shake. Another big hit from there.
That was big. Yeah, it's a good song.
It's about a Fiat 500. Single Girl, another poppy one from there. And also a song called Ciao with Jarvis Cocker, kind of duet between Miki and Jarvis. It's a great song on there.
Oh, nice.
And they toured with the Gin Blossoms in the US after that. Your favourites, Neil?
Blossoms. I like Gin Blossoms, yeah.
Although they probably should have been in the UK promoting it, because Americans they like the shoegaze sound, but they weren't into the Britpop stuff, right?
I mean, Main Street had a similar story, didn't they? You realised that you should have focused in Bournemouth.
Yes,
but you spent too long trying to make it in London.
That's true.
That is true. Yeah, that is true.
Similar story.
We used to drive similar, but not quite. Yeah. It's the same story actually. Yeah.
Yeah, you should have focused at home.
You should
first.
fuck off.
So
he's right.
So that was March 96. But in October 96, drummer Chris Ackland, Nosher, committed suicide. Died by suicide, basically.
Yeah. Tragic.
In his parents' garden. And we talk about it in the interview, so maybe we can talk about that after. Well, let's let Miki talk about it. It's not really our place to talk about it. I guess she talks about it well. So, but basically, they called it a day after that. They didn't want to continue. So, Miki became production editor. Emma formed Sing Sing. Do you remember them? I
remember the name. I don't remember any of the music.
And they did a bit for a while. Then she also kind of went into PR. They reformed in 2015. Played a few gigs with Justin Welch from Elastica on the drums, and released an EP called Blind Spot as well. But it didn't last very long. And as you hear it in the interview, they basically didn't keep in touch. But in 2018, Miki formed a band called Piroshka with Justin Welch again from Elastica, and her partner, Moose, who she mentions a couple of times in the interview. If you're wondering who Moose is, it's her partner, who was also in a band called Moose around the same time that Lush started, like end of the 80s, another shoegaze band as well. Emma released a solo album in 2023 called Pearlies, which is pretty good. I was listening to it. When it came out, I listened to it. It's really good. And in 2022, Miki published this book, Fingers Crossed, which again I'm going to rave about. And I'm not just saying it because you're on. It's one of the best kind of biographies I've ever read.
So,
and because
what's the
of
name
that,
of it?
It's called Fingers Crossed:
It's
How
called Fingers
Music
Crossed.
Saved Me from Success.
Ah,
Cool.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And interestingly, so because of the books, they were doing like tours and promoting the book and stuff and talks. And they said, "Oh, are you going to play some songs?" And they're like, "Well, no, I can't play them by myself." So she got a band together, again, her partner, Moose, and a couple of other people, just so they could play some Lush songs, just to have something to do to promote the book. And then from that, they started writing their own songs, and then it became the Miki Berenyi Trio, or MB3, as she calls them in the interview. And they've had some singles out. They're all great. And they got their debut album is coming out on our friends Simon Raymond's Bella Union label. The album's called Tripler, coming out April the 4th. And looks like it's going to be great.
All right. So shall we have a listen to the interview and we'll have a chat afterwards?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Here's Miki Berenyi from Lush. Enjoy.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on. Yeah, you just told me you just got off tour with your new band, Miki Berenyi Trio. How was it?
It was fine. I mean, it was good. It's just I kind of, I have to temper the touring to my kind of age. And I've realized that I can do 5 gigs on the trot. I can sit in the back of an absolutely packed vehicle for days on end, right? But the combination of those things plus freezing January weather is actually just slightly over the edge of tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how were the crowds?
Really nice, it was lovely to go. It's a thing called Independent Venues Week, so they were all kind of quite small, local kind of venues. And, I do think it's a really good cause because I just think, I don't know, I come from an era where all of these things were allowed to coexist. Like bigger venues didn't feel like they were actually actively driving smaller venues out of business. But that just seems to be quite hard to manage these days. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we talk about it a lot on the podcast, like all the 90s venues that have disappeared. It's heartbreaking, really, right?
Yeah, and I suppose it was down to, I guess it's people's tastes. Like I say, at that time they just weren't a threat. The idea of something like the Hammersmith Palais or the Hammersmith Odeon existing was not going to matter at all to like the Clarendon or the Moonlight or something. Do you know what I mean? But I think these days everyone's kind of, I don't know, I suppose the audience is a lot smaller. There was a time when everyone just went to gigs regularly.
Yeah.
And now I think there seems to be a kind of, what I think big business does is sort of claim those people by making them pay 350 quid for a gig, which means they can't go to anything else for the rest of the year, which is the bit I object to, really.
Yeah. No, and they were totally affordable, right? So even if it was a band that you'd read a 2-line review in NME, you could afford to just give it a try, right? Back then.
Absolutely. And I think you still can, I think most of the gigs we were playing, because it was part of that week, they were like 12, 14 quid a ticket, it's nothing really.
No, less than the cinema.
But I think it's the kind of big bit, because back then, even if you went to see a band at, Wembley or something, it wouldn't be the equivalent of what a Taylor Swift ticket is now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think my Nebworth tickets for Oasis were like 12 quid or something like that. Yeah.
The good old days.
Good old days. Also, I saw you put out a new song a few weeks ago, Eighth Deadly Thing, and you got a full album coming soon. That's really exciting. What can you tell us about it?
God, what can I tell you about it? I mean, it's been quite a long time coming. So the band has been going for a couple of years now. And to be honest, we sort of, we always thought we'll record an album eventually, but I think we just wanted to get out of the cycle of that. Form a band, record an album as soon as possible, go on tour, and then kind of replay that forever. Not least because when you do it that way, unless you're already a band with a lot of, kind of followers and a big profile, you put that album out and you play, it's over. It's over in a couple of weeks, and that's it, right? And so I think we just felt it, just to be able to enjoy it, so that we just played lots and lots of gigs before we actually put all the songs on an album and recorded them, just to sort of prolong the enjoyment
Sure.
of it.
That's really interesting to hear. And you're putting it out on Bill Union, right? So I spoke to Simon Raymond just before Christmas, and he said it's the same thing, that albums just get lost in the ether, and it's something that the band puts so much of themselves in, and then it comes out and it's great for a couple of weeks, and then, like you say, it just seems to disappear. It's interesting, right?
And I think this, I get it, one of the liberations of kind of the online world is that you can be a tiny band and record everything yourself and putting it out on Bandcamp and blah, blah, blah. But that does mean that there are hundreds of records coming out every month, right? Like the idea of a kind of NME or melody maker being able to review the full crop is just an impossibility. So, and it kind of is difficult to get noticed. So literally this is the best way for us. It's like, well, we can play a load of gigs. By the time we've actually got the album ready to come out, you hope that enough people are interested. I mean, it's very DIY. And it is very grassroots. It's a bit like, forming a band in like 1982 or something and just starting at the very bottom.
Are you enjoying that process of it?
I am enjoying it. I mean, there's also an element of being quite old, which means there's not you can't really have a plan, because I'm not sure I'm going to be capable of playing gigs and doing all that for long enough to actually for that plan to reach any kind of a fruition, right? So it
Come
literally
on,
has to.
Mick Jagger's still doing it.
Well, I would argue that Mick Jagger tours in considerably more comfort and style than we do.
Sure.
But yeah, it just means that it has to be very much here and now. So I can't, you just have to enjoy literally the next month, because who knows when it will end.
Sure. All right. Can you take us back then to when you're growing up and getting into music and stuff? What were you listening to?
Oh God. I mean, I think that when I was a kid, I think also being like children of a child of immigrants, they're not that tied into what is going on around you. My mum used to listen to the radio and stuff. I don't remember music being that sort of significant. It was really wasn't until I kind of was at school, and so when other kids got into music, that's when I kind of got into music. And then by the time I was sort of 13, 14, and kind of met Emma and had this little gang of us that were all at school together, then we, like a lot of teenagers, you suddenly start buying the equivalent of smash hits, or you get very obsessive. There's there's quite a kind of hormonal element to getting into music at that stage. It's all crushes on different members of Duran or whatever the hell it is, you know what I mean? And
who was your favorite?
Mine was John Taylor. I think Emma had Simon Le Bon. We were quite diplomatic about divvying up the crushes so that we didn't step on each other's toes.
Yeah, so you were discovering that together. That's interesting. Like, well, there's the three of us that do this podcast together, and we met at about the same age that you met Emma, I think, like 13, 14. And yeah, it's just that discovering it together that's kind of part of the fun, right?
Yeah, because I mean, I think especially on that very early kind of moments especially when you first start going to gigs, I mean, it's always much more fun to share obsessions with friends. Again, it's probably different now because people go online and they find a whole load of fans and then they can chat to them about that stuff. But, when we were, pre-digital age, it was literally the people around you. And you wanted allies because you didn't want to look like a weirdo. It's very easy to puncture your, sort of confidence if you were into a band that certain other people didn't like, and they could make you feel very small indeed. So having a sort of gang of friends who would listen to and chat about music, and then actually to go to gigs with those people.
Yeah.
I think it was always very daunting. I mean, I remember the first gig I went to on my own, no one would bloody go with me, was The Fall at the
Oh wow.
Lyceum.
Mhm.
And and I had a lovely time. It was, and so that again was a different experience, because to go to a gig like that and then actually meet people, and nice people, not
Mm.
creepy people who are trying to get off with you or anything like,
Mm.
but just other music fans. And it just opened a whole world of going to gigs and, writing a fanzine and then going and visiting, going on and seeing bands like in different parts of the country, because you'd have somewhere to stay. And this is all,
Mm.
before we were even 16. So you're quite
Yeah.
vulnerable, and you kind of
Yeah.
rely on that community as a sort of safe space, or whatever the terminology is these days.
Mm.
So yeah, just a whole world kind of opened up, and it wasn't, yes, of course, it's the music, it's the music, it's the music. You love listening to it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's so many things that kind of contribute to this. I think I do look at the kind of the way we lived when, in those sort of in the 80s, like I say, pre-digital, probably quite difficult to explain to young kids now. No screens in your bedroom. I mean, your bedroom was just a kind of, if you were lucky, you had a record player and weren't screamed at to turn it down the whole time. And then that was it, and books. And that was it. You were lucky if you had bloody central heating in it. So
Sure.
there was no, the only way to kind of commune with people was to actually get out there.
Mm.
And that required quite a lot of self-confidence if you were going into some environment that you knew nothing about. So having friends or a little
Mm.
gang of pals made all of that, possible, really.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. It's quite a leap from Duran Duran to weird experimental guitar music. How did you make that kind of crossover, I guess?
I mean, again, I would say it's circumstance, because I think when we were, like I say, 13, whatever, going to see Haircut 100 and Culture
Oh,
Club and what
nice.
have you. Great gigs, by the way. I'm not going to knock them. They were brilliant. But there was a sort of, it was being in London, as we've said, at a given time when there were hundreds of venues. If you
Mm.
bought the NME and you looked in the back, there was just, there was 25 gigs a night that you could potentially go to, and they were all cheap as chips, and they
Yeah.
didn't tend to sell out. You could just decide at the last minute what you wanted to go to.
Mm.
So, you know, going to see a band at, yeah, the Hammersmith Odeon or the Hammersmith Palais, you would then see that the support band were playing somewhere. So you go and see them, and then you'd see their support band. And to be
Mm.
honest, within about 3 or 4 months, you're in some, at the Hope and Anchor or some pokey little pub somewhere. Um, just going to see, whatever band is on,
Mm.
and, it's the people you meet. And then every time you leave a gig, people are handing out flyers, and then you sort of,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
blah, blah,
Mm.
blah. And obviously the music papers covered these bands so you could get certain amounts of information, but you didn't know
Mm.
what they sounded like exactly unless you listened to John Peel. But there was a
Sure.
way of finding out all these things. It took a certain amount of commitment, and it wasn't as
Mm.
simple as just pressing a button on Spotify,
No.
but it was absolutely doable. And when you're a teenager, you've got an awful lot of free time to pursue this
Sure.
stuff. So
Yeah, and it's interesting, like you say, you're kind of you're in the scene, but you're also creating it as well, especially if you're like making fanzines and stuff, like you just said. That's really important part of it, right? Yeah.
but there was a lot of people doing that. You eventually, you couldn't go to a gig without, everyone would be involved somehow. They're either
Mm.
putting on gigs in Slough or something, and that's what they do, or they've got a stall at
Mm.
Portobello Market and selling bootlegs, or they're in a band, or they're, you know, driving a band, or they're, everyone's
Mm.
somehow involved.
Yeah.
And yeah, the whole fanzine culture and blah blah blah. So, I mean, it probably helped that there was quite a high unemployment rate at that time, and an infrastructure that supported you being unemployed.
Yeah.
You didn't live a life of luxury, but because everyone else was in that same boat, it didn't feel quite so appalling. Do you know what I mean? There was a lot of
Yeah.
squat culture. There was students got grants. They didn't have to pay fees, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah. True. I mean, I think I was one of the last cohorts of non-fee paying students, I think. Yeah. How about when you first picked up an instrument? Did music come naturally to you? Could you just do it intuitively?
No, not at all.
No.
I didn't do, I think I played the recorder when I was at primary school, but that's about it. I just picked up a guitar because I wanted to be in a band, and I think that's quite a basic sort of drive. I didn't have the patience or the application, or probably the role models that a lot of, blokes in particular, I think were quite happy to sort of, buy instruments and invest in them and pedals and kind of amps and kind of get going with all that and practice in their bedrooms. And there was more of a kind of template for that. I think for girls, you were expected to just become like, have a naturally amazing voice and become, a lead singer was the most obvious thing. Unless you were like quite classically trained, you would get, you know, women musicians, but they almost tended to have been, you know, I don't know, having some sort of lessons or something that gave them that confidence. So I think, that kind of punk rock thing of bands like the Slits or or even, by the time we were we were doing music, there was quite a lot of post-punk DIY ethic that there was almost a badge of pride that you couldn't play properly, right? And people were writing songs that, you know, if I think back to it, I think they were very inventive with what little kind of actual ability you had. There were people expanding that by making, I don't know, really melodic bass lines or kind of quite interesting guitar sort of things that didn't require like some massive heavy metal solo in the middle. It were just like single notes. And I think people used that really inventively. So we were part of that kind of thing. It was more that you didn't really, certainly me and Emma didn't master like a kind of entire catalogue of like Beatles and what Led Zeppelin tunes.
Right, you're supposed to, yeah.
Had the kind of 4 chords we could play and then sort of strung those together to make a song and then kind of went on from there.
That's really interesting what you say about like blokes having like a template or like a license, I guess, to get the pedals and the amps and all of that. Was it like intimidating going into guitar shops and shit like that at that time?
Oh, it was appalling. Going to a guitar shop was just like, yeah, it was a total stress kind of experience because the idea of even like plugging in a guitar and playing it in front of some bloke who you knew would be like making withering looks behind your back.
Yeah.
I think there was 1 or 2 guitar shops on Denmark Street where the people running them were really nice, and I just stuck to those because the others were just awful, and the blokes were genuinely horrible. There's just no point. Although I'm not buying anything off you. It's just wasn't worth it. So, but I think that there would be usually you would rely on a boyfriend or a male friend, to help you out with that. Oh, can you come with me? You know what I mean? And that would legitimize it. I know it's a bit of a cop out, but it just wasn't worth the kind of humiliation of trying to tackle that stuff on your own because you knew you didn't have the ability, right? But that was the point. And it's not really, you can't really have that discussion in a guitar shop with someone who's just got some arched eyebrow at you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So, if you claim you couldn't play, I'm sure you could, but how did you start working out what you wanted Lush to sound like when you had started getting the band together?
I mean, my God, I think at the beginning stages, we just wanted to make a barely coherent sound. There wasn't a huge amount of thought put into it.
Mm,
The motivation was that there were a lot of bands, and a lot of bands were playing, and a lot of bands were enjoying themselves, and we wanted to join in. And there were plenty of terrible bands. I mean, literally, I'd say a good 60% of them were awful, but people were very forgiving about that,
mm,
and they could hear if there was a germ of something. People didn't expect things to just be handed to them on a platter, completed. It was
mm,
enjoyable to see bands in their kind of nascent moments,
mm.
especially if they went on to bigger and better things. And you could claim that you were there the first time they played in some ropey pub, third on the
Have you
bill.
got any? Have you got any bands like that you can have bragging rights on? You saw like that?
I mean, probably the biggest band we saw was the Smiths,
Okay.
and they were at the beginning. I mean, they were already clearly very well honed, but I do remember seeing them supporting the Fall and the Sisters of Mercy and
Mm.
all sorts of little gigs. We saw them at Dingwalls, and
Oh
yeah,
well,
that's probably the most impressive one, I guess. Yeah.
that is pretty impressive. Yeah, yeah. In terms of shoegaze, I mean, are you comfortable with the tag shoegaze before I go on and talk about shoegaze?
I mean, I'm comfortable with it now. I always think it's a ridiculous, kind
Mm,
of moniker. I mean, it always was. I think I don't. I genuinely don't really care. I've been lumped into scenes before, and you get to the
mm.
point where you just shrug and say whatever. I mean, not least because now shoegaze is quite cool, so you think, all right, I'll take that. I I don't particularly think that we are a shoegaze band or
Mm,
ever have been. I don't really understand the how we get put in the same category as a band like Slowdive. And that's not like me slagging off Slowdive. I just
mm,
think our music is completely different.
mm,
I think that shoegaze to me implies this sort of soundscape of kind of, I mean, I guess it depends because do you think the Valentines are shoegaze? I don't think the Valentines are shoegaze.
mm.
You know, are the Cocteau Twins
But
shoegaze? Maybe they are sonically, but they write pop songs, really. You know,
yeah,
I
dream pop.
don't yeah, but it's got a hook, it's got a
Mm,
chorus. I don't
mm,
think Slow Dive have like, oh, and here comes the chorus, it's a sort of sonic landscape. I think a lot of ride songs are like that.
mm, mm,
And that's its own thing. I think, I can see where that connects to a band like Spiritualized. But I just think
mm,
that, people like us and the Cocteau Twins, and I just think we wrote pop songs and they just happen to have these layered guitars on them and a certain shimmer to them. But I guess if that all lumps you into one category, then fair play. But like I
that's
say, I don't really
interesting.
understand it.
I kind of agree. I always saw Lush as very much like a 4AD band. I think you fit into the 4AD aesthetic completely, but yeah, not necessarily shoegaze. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. So it's
But I
interesting
think
that you
someone
aligned
else,
yourself with the Cocteau Twins because I see that. I see that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think I don't understand how a song like Hypocrite is a shoegaze song,
Mm,
and that was actually pre-Britpop.
mm,
To me, then if you're pulling it into a category, to me that was part of being into that kind of post-punk music, and that's where garage bands and things like that. That's where that came from. But I
mm.
just think categories are for journalists. Go ahead,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Fill your boots, but I would argue that any band that gets put in a category just shrugs their shoulders and is slightly baffled by it.
Sure, sure. I love a good subgenre. So yeah, yeah. So speaking of 4AD, so you got signed reasonably quickly, I think. I mean, would you was it exciting to be on such a cool indie label? Did you care about being on a cool indie label like 4AD?
Yeah, massively. I mean, God, when they signed us,
Mm,
I just thought it was a joke. I just thought there's absolutely no way that that is going to happen. They came to see us at the Falcon. I think we were playing a gig at the Falcon, and maybe Ivo, head of 4AD, kind of somehow put it together that the Pale Saints played with us so that he could see both bands in a single night. And our gig was a disaster. I just thought, well, that's that. That's the last time we hear from them. But yeah, we got signed amazingly. I think that's where the sound started to come together a bit, because I think Ivo was aware that we were kind of all over the place. But, you know, he put us in the studio with John Fryer, and that was a kind of effort to sort of actually put some sort of order to what we were doing and bring out a kind of performance element. So, and then it kind of, so we really needed that kind of molding, because we just, I don't think we even knew what we were doing in rehearsal. I don't think we knew how to rehearse. You know, you just sort of, you get through a song and you think, oh, we got through it. Great. Next one. You know, there's no understanding that you're actually meant to finesse this somehow, right?
Yeah, well, I think the first album came out and stuff, and it got pretty well received. It got a lot of press. Did you get on with the music press? I know it was pretty kind of brutal at the time, the UK music press. They seemed to like you at first. I mean, did you get along well with them?
I mean, it was kind of it was a kind of extremes, really. I think that, you know, we were delighted to be in the music press. It was, you know, yeah, you felt like, I don't know, like you were getting famous, I suppose. It felt really important. I think we were a bit, you know, there were journalists I got on with. I knew them from the fanzine days. I knew a lot of those music journalists, and I got on with them, you know, and I think it was difficult to not take it personally when the tides turned against us. I don't think it's not that I ever expected to be lauded to the skies. You know, I could take valid criticism, but I think that the kind of trolling and the personal attacks were really bruising, you know, and I wasn't expecting that. And I think now I'm older, I do understand that, you know, I understand the business more. I understand that the Melody Maker and the NME were both owned by IPC. They were in competition with each other, that for their, you know, really it wasn't just about the bands, it's about how these magazines survive. They have to build people up and knock them down. They need a churn to keep readers interested, and you become just a kind of pawn in that. And, you know, your value is really about, you know, how much they can take the piss out of you. You know, eventually you get to a point where there's just a load of people who are like lining up to see you pilloried. And so the music press provide that, because they know that that's what their readers are after, you know.
Yeah, and it becomes less about the music. It's oh yeah, I was reading something the other day about this, about how like in the UK it was all about nonsense and, you know, gossip and knocking people down, but because they were every week. But in America, where they're monthly, like Rolling Stone and Spin and stuff, it's much more about the music, and they're taken a bit more seriously. Did you experience that? I'm just trying to test this theory I read about the other day.
No, it's completely true. I mean, I think that the NME and the weeklies had quite a lot of power, in that those, you know, publications were read by people abroad. So the first time we went to America, they were already calling us a shoegaze band, which at the time was like a complete insult, right? And we were like, oh God, you know, this is just, we're not going to be able to shape this. Except that they took it terribly seriously and thought that was some sort of great term that kind of, you know, afforded us some sort of kudos. But I mean, look, don't get me wrong, I think there was a really good kind of energy and knockabout fun to the British music press, but it was very tabloid, very tabloid.
Yeah.
And, you know, the American press was much more serious. You know, it was probably a bit po-faced. I'm sure people at the Maker and the NME took the piss out of them, like, oh God, these people writing these like ridiculous, like, oh my God, what they're writing about. They're writing about Lush like they're the bloody Rolling Stones. It's ridiculous. I get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think, it's like, the thing is now that they're gone, that's
true.
it's
true.
never a perfect world,
No, that's true. That's true. You played Lollapalooza in 1992, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Ministry, etc. You write about it really well in your book. That's probably my favorite part to read. But the kind of the rampant sexism, sexual harassment, even basically, from a lot of the bands. I mean, how was that to deal with at the time?
I mean, I don't think it was from the bands. I think that I was actually quite pleasantly surprised by how not like that most of the bands were, given that they had these sort of testosterone fueled image, all of these, most of the bands, apart from the Mary Chain, had that kind of American rock kind of stadium, heavy, blah, 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 but actually I maybe didn't realize the subtleties that bands like Soundgarden and Pearl Jam were actually from a very kind of sort of progressive Seattle scene. So they actually weren't like that. The Chili Peppers were, it's much more, that was more the kind of frat boy California, bikini girls on the beach kind of, I didn't really understand the differences between these bands. And even Ministry, coming from a background of like kind of 80s, slightly dance even oriented, but with the roots in things like Killing Joke. So actually going on that tour, I sort of learned a lot about, the sort of subtle differences between all of those bands. And it, because it was America, Britain was like a bloody backwater. I love Britain, but, going to America where it's like, oh my God, this traveling circus and everything is like super duper, like huge buses and hotels, and kind of like, God, it was just a world apart. So it felt, properly exciting. But yes, with it comes the whole big American stadium rock kind of vibe, which is, groupies and, I mean, I would argue that it was more certain crew members that were the real worst offenders. And that's often the case, if I'm honest,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. UK as a backwater. Yeah, I know what you mean. It must have. It sounds pretty chaotic, though. The whole tour sounds insane.
I mean, it was. And when I say backwater, all I mean, right, is that Britain in the kind of, now it's everything's all fancy, and we've got, lovely restaurants and blah, blah, blah. And, we kind of, but there was a time when, if you went on tour, like getting a hotel in Britain meant like some, guest house. I mean, it was like 40 towers, right?
Sure.
Right? And when you go to America and you open this like door to some hotel room and it's got 2 double beds and there's a phone in the bloody bathroom and it's got a walk-in shower and you're like, oh my God, and everything is like cheap. It was then, and huge, just shitloads of food, like a British rider was like 4 packets of hula hoops and a kind of curled up cheese sandwich. And then you go to America and there's fruit baskets and, God knows what, like, so, yeah, it was just it was a different level of affluence, really.
Sure. So, well, it sounds fun anyway, as well. Yeah. People, when you brought out Love Life, people saw it as Lush going Britpop. I mean, how did you see it at the time?
I mean, I have a bit of a knee-jerk response to that kind of because it implies that we sat in a room and made some sort of plan
Sure.
about, how do we get in on this scene, which we absolutely didn't. I think it is, it would be silly to deny that whatever is happening around you doesn't have some kind of effect on you.
Mm.
And there's probably, multiple strands to that. One of them is that the record industry was massively changing. Independent labels as well were having to kind of act like major labels. So, you had to get in the charts, because by then, if you didn't get in the charts, there was no NME feature, there was no Melody Maker feature, there was no review, there was nothing, right? So there was an element of having to play that game. And I think, unless you were like huge already, then you could kind of defy that. And I think that, I suppose maybe in my defense, what I would say is that if you look at the back catalogue of Lush songs, I would argue that, Ladykillers isn't a million miles from a song like Hypocrite. And, there were kind of poppy, punky songs on every record that we ever made. So it's not like we completely transformed ourselves to make Love Life. The major difference was we didn't have a kind of name producer. And up till then, we'd kind of, there was very much a sort of work with a producer who will then kind of, impose some sort of sound, not against our will. That would be the point, that would bring the difference between the records, because me and Emma always wrote songs in the way that we wrote songs. They didn't massively change over the years. It was just where our inspiration led us. So having a producer come in and kind of like, bring out a certain sound at a certain time was, I think, how the albums kind of had their own flavor. And by the time we made Love Life, we'd been on tour, like we played so many gigs by then that we just felt we didn't really need, we just wanted to think, what do we sound like if we literally just record this as we play live, right? Without having, the filter of a producer putting that sound on top of it. And that's really what came out. But, I think I remember Emma saying that, yes, okay, there was probably the choice of singles, I think at a different time, it wouldn't have been Ladykillers and Single Girl that were singles, or 500. It would have been, I don't know, I can't remember what's on that album, but
Well, Last Night or something's a bit more kind of layered guitars and all of that on there, right? Yeah,
absolutely. For sure, Love Life. I mean, I still can't understand how Love Life wasn't a single, but do you know what I mean? That was, and single selection is not my strong point. I mean, even with this MV3 album, it's like we play all the songs live. So, I said to Simon and the Bella Union team, pick what you like. I'm not the expert, right? You pick what you think might get played. I don't really care. All I care about is the album. So
yeah. Was there a backlash from old school Lush fans?
I mean, there was, in that I think, we always had a bit of a tricky balance between America and Britain. And I think, it was really good that we did the work in America when we did Lollapalooza and Spooky. My God, we really toured, because when Split came out, it did absolutely nothing in Britain, but it did okay in America. So it meant that we still had some sort of traction. But then when Love Life came up, the Americans were not interested at all.
Oh, really?
And it was much more of a thing in Britain and Europe.
Interesting. Were 4AD cool with it? Like when I spoke to Simon, he said kind of part of the reason they left 4AD was because then the label identity was kind of encroaching too much on the band identity. So, I mean, were 4AD, the cover and stuff is not your typical 4AD cover. Were they cool with your new direction?
I mean, yeah, I think the difficulty, I mean, look, the Cocteau Twins had a completely different experience because they were there from the start, and their image was absolutely tied in with 4AD. I think for us, we never balked at that. So having Vaughan and Chris designing our sleeves and whatever was just like an absolute bonus for us.
Mm.
And, and they designed the Love Life sleeves as well. It's not like we went
Okay.
elsewhere, I loved the way, I mean, we still work with Chris Big, so I loved how as sleeve designers, they listened to the music, they thought about what would work for that record. They didn't just trot out these kind of, same old. It wasn't even a matter of like, oh, well, we were going to use that image with that band, but actually we could just reuse it with another band. That's not the way that they worked at all. There was a lot of meticulous thought that went into their designs. I think the difficulty with Love Life for us was that, Ivo kind of left. He was so integral to that label, and around the time of Split, he moved to America, and then from then on he kind of I mean, he had, he kind of burnt out, and I get that, but he let go of the label and it just wasn't really the same. And I think by the time Love Life was being put out, it was a very different label. And but as I say, as was the whole kind of indie landscape by then.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you said that you when you wrote Ladykiller, it's kind of a conscious effort to write a hit. What was your formula for writing a hit song?
I mean, I just thought, I don't know. I just thought, all right, fine, I'll put all the catchy stuff in. You know what I mean? I'll put it's very rare that I would put the title of a song in the song itself.
Right.
You can say that that's deliberately obtuse, but it wasn't really. I think that when we would write songs, it was a bit like writing a book or a novel. Do you know what I mean? That you think, well, what's the overarching title for this thing? So do you know what I mean? It's not like deluxe as like
Sure.
deluxe. I mean, Sweetness and Light has Sweetness and Light in there somewhere, but I think, so yeah, fine. Ladykillers, I'll stick it in the bloody, chorus. I'll do the hand claps. I'll do the catchy
claps,
backing
yes.
vocals rather than the sort of, subtle harmonies. It will be a proper kind of ooh, la la la, and here comes the next one. All those little punctuating hooks.
Sure.
I thought, fine, I'm just going to chuck it all into one song, and then and then I can get on with the rest of the album.
Oh, it works out. I didn't realize it was about like Anthony Kiedis and other people like him, basically. Can you talk a little bit about that kind of
I do feel a bit bad about the Anthony Kiedis, the fact that kind of came out and became a known thing, just because it's not like, oh, look at this one person. It was really about hey, it's just a cumulative thing about what it's like, and it's
all other stuff. It's about Camden and it's all, you mentioned lots of other things. It's not just him, right?
No, for sure, but I think the point being that I just thought it would be like, I'm a big Au Pairs fan, right? And I used to love that, Playing with a Different Sex, because what I really loved about it is it had that kind of ballsy feminist, sometimes quite intellectual feminist slant, but it was done with a real sense of humor, right, and attitude. So I've always kind of liked that way of writing, and it was just, I thought, a fair observation. Like it's kind of rare to have lyrics like that from a female perspective. And I don't want to be the kind of moany person who goes, oh, it's really shit being a woman and look at the way you're treated. I just thought it was quite funny, right? Because most of the women I know can relate to like that kind of bloke. They're everywhere. Right, they really are. They're not the majority, but when you come across them, it's like, oh, you are going to talk about it and take the piss and roll your eyes. Right?
Can you explain to our listeners what kind of bloke you're referring to?
I mean, it's the guy who is, you know, I guess sees the kind of chatting up thing as a sort of game, a game that someone has to win, right? So they've got their honed techniques that they want to try out on you. And, you know, I get it. I get it. People flirt, people chat each other up. But, you know, I would argue, I just want to be talked to. I just have a conversation with someone. And if you hit it off, that's great. I don't need someone to kind of give me stupid kind of compliments in a sort of effort to lull me into some sort of sexual mode. It's not going to work, right? I mean, it might work in that, okay, like, fine, if you want a shag, right, we can do that if I'm in the mood, right? But it will be done in a certain way where I'll go like, right, great. Okay, fine. Let's do it. Perform. Bye. You're an idiot. I never need to see you again. Thanks for scratching the itch, but that's that. Okay. And the fact that blokes don't even acknowledge that women might even think that way. They think that we're so stupid that if they sit there and go on about, you know, how sexy you are, or, you know, pay you certain compliments, or try and be all sort of manly. It's just embarrassing. In the same way, I mean, I've seen women do it. I've seen blokes fall for that, you know, the fluttering eyelashes and the feminine giggle and the downplaying your intellect. You know, blokes can be played in that way as well. I just fucking hate it, to be honest. And it's an insult to my intelligence, you know.
Sure. I want to talk a little bit more about Britpop. So you were right at the center of the action, basically, thanks to friends and boyfriends and stuff at the time when it kicked off. And you are very, very disparaging about Britpop in your book, very funnily so. Why did you take against Britpop so much?
I mean, look, there's going to be a bit of, you know, ego to that. I think, you know, I mean, you've talked about how you got into music as a teenager. You know, there's a thing about being in a scene, and when that scene changes and other people come in, you can get a bit like, who are these people? I don't like them. You know what I mean? And the whole flavor of something is lost, and it's kind of a sad thing. I think that for me, Britpop was, I missed the camaraderie of bands. I mean, don't get me wrong, bands are always competitive, right? It's not like it's one big happy family, but there was an ethos. There was a like, yes, we'll share our equipment. Yes, we'll kind of, you know, we're all in it together. There's a sort of, you know, anti-star, anti-corporate, you know, there's a sort of wanting to be part of the underground. That went, right? That completely went. It was everybody scrabbling for the number one position. You know what I mean? Oasis v Blur, whatever. Like 5 years ago, that would have been an embarrassment. No one would have admitted that they were deliberately trying to get a number one record. You'd have been looked at like you were a complete sellout, right? So all of that changed. And, you know, with it came, you know, there was a huge influx of money. And suddenly, you know, it's not really, you know, I always felt that bands did have a particular mentality and a particular outlook. You know, there is a bit of a kind of, you know, us against them thing. And when you're kind of in this world where you're mingling with like actors and comedians and PRs and hat designers and whatever, right? These elite people who like to think of themselves as, you know, that dreaded word, creatives, right? It is anathema to me. I cannot bear that world of, you know, these people behind the velvet rope who think that they're so bloody special. So I hated it because that's what that world was, you know, plus a shed load of drugs that makes, you know, as much fun as drugs can be. It makes people quite nasty, you know, they don't really care about each other. And and I just really didn't like the atmosphere of that
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
all.
And I guess the laddishness compared to the shoegaze scene, which was, at least had a few kind of female members in bands,
Yeah, it
right?
was completely unpolitical as well.
Mm,
I'm not a massive political person myself, but you suddenly realize that you do have certain beliefs,
mm,
a certain kind
sure.
of feminism or kind of, I don't know, trying to sort of, you know, dismantle kind of class boundaries and
Mm,
race and blah blah blah. And to
mm,
me, I just thought it's so ironic because people often talk about how Britpop was, oh, boys dressing as girls and girls dressing as boys, and there was sort of, racial boundaries that were broken down. And I don't see that at all. I think I saw it was the commodification of all of those things. There was
mm,
nothing behind it. It was all
mm,
used just to sort of burnish some sort of self-image. It didn't go anywhere, right?
mm,
So,
mm,
whether it's it was just shallow. It was shallow, you know.
mm, mm. Yeah.
So yeah, now I'm remembering how much I hated it. So you've got me going. I'll stop now. I'll stop.
Yeah. Apologies. So the band, well, Lush broke up in '96 when Chris died. I mean, it must have been a difficult time. Did you consider at all carrying on with the band?
No, because
No.
I think already prior to that, there were a lot of difficulties with the band. There were a lot of cracks that had started to form. Some you could argue was just a kind of general burnout. Again, looking back with a bit more of an overview, it does make me realize that, in that kind of late 90s to 2000 period, there was quite a lot of those bands that split up.
Mm,
The environment just wasn't really right for people. So Ride split up, Slow Dive split up, My Bloody Valentine split up. All of these bands just went
mm,
because it
mm.
wasn't, like I say, Britpop, blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
I think on a personal level, yeah, I think we were just quite, I mean, me and Emma in particular, we weren't really getting on. We had problems with management. 4AD wasn't what it was anymore. It was a difficult period. And I think, you know, prior to that, I would have tried to keep going because the band was such a central part of my life and I really did love
Mm,
it.
mm,
But I think with Chris gone, it was just that was it. I mean, there was absolutely no way I would have even considered it because really by then he was the person that I needed the most in that band. He was the person who made that band survivable for me.
mm,
And without
mm,
him, there was just absolutely no way I could have really gone on with it. And
mm,
not least that just the effect of his death, it took me, I mean, over a year to get myself back together again and even consider just even going to a gig. I just stopped going to
mm,
gigs. I stopped talking to loads of people. I just didn't want to be anywhere near it. I had to go and start again and get another job and get the hell out of
mm,
it, really.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And you went into civilian life. Did you take well to civilian life after being a rock star?
Do you know what? I was talking about this with someone recently. I better be careful because I don't want to mention the person, but I actually think I did. I think I surprised myself. I didn't really think about it, but it made me think that now I look back, there's quite a lot of bands I know who, when they split up, it was really hard for them. Like they never kind of really wanted to get a proper job. They never wanted, like the ego for them, it was
Mm.
really hard. Whereas I'm not being funny, but I remember when Moose did his TEFL course, so he was teaching English as a foreign language. We had to
Mm.
start thinking of getting a job, and I was like, "Oh, why don't you do that course? It's only 5 weeks. You'd be great at it, right?"
Mm.
So he did this course, and when he graduated, or he got his TEFL qualification, like most people would go abroad and teach, but we weren't going to go
Mm.
anywhere. So we were
Mm.
trying to, I remember like going and putting like signs in newsagents' windows, trying to tout for work. And a load of them came back completely misunderstanding and thinking that we were providing English lessons for like primary school children, like of kids whose parents didn't
Oh,
speak.
like
Like the
Right, right, right.
parent, like they weren't
Mm,
British families,
mm,
they'd
mm,
been,
mm.
Somali or whatever.
Mm, mm,
And
mm.
there's a lot of, immigrants in this area. So they were contacting him and he was like, no, 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 that's not what I teach. So I did it. I was like, oh, well, I can do that. I can teach a bit of reading and handwriting
Sure.
to sort of some school kids. So I used to get the bus and go and teach these little kids. I loved it. It was really good fun, like do these little
Mm,
private lessons and rock up at someone's house. It's quite
mm.
sweet. And then I got a job at IPC through a mate because so in a
Oh,
funny way, well, I was working in TV listings and I remember going that, and it was quite awkward because sometimes I'd be in the lift with like enemy journalists or Melody Maker people, and it was really I could tell that they were giving me the side eye and they couldn't wait to
right.
get in the office to go like, oh my God, how the mighty have fallen. Guess who I've just seen in the lift?
Sure.
But I actually didn't give a shit because I was like, well, I'm not being funny. I'm earning more than I ever earned in a bloody band. And
Yeah.
also, I really enjoyed getting a
Mm,
job. It was really good fun. So I feel kind of sad for people who have kind of come
mm,
out of band world and not
mm.
gone out and got a job because they think, it's a bit get off your high horse, isn't it? Or
Sure.
they're
Sure.
embarrassed. I think there's
Mm,
nothing to be embarrassed about. It's great out there.
sure. 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 All right. I've kept you a long time. Is it okay to speak for a little bit more? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. I apologize. I really wanted to ask about your book, though. I'll do a quick plug for it. Fingers crossed. Got it here. It's probably one of the most kind of honest rock biographies I think I've ever read. The only other one I could think of is Mark Lanigan's book, where you read it and you think everything he said is like totally true. And yeah, I don't know. I knew I was going to love it after like 2 pages. I can just hear your voice coming through you're going to tell me it's ghostwritten now, but I could feel your voice kind of coming through the pages. I mean, how was it to kind of lay it out there in that way? And you spend a really long time in the book on your childhood, which is kind of unusual for a rock biography. I mean, why did you take that approach?
Well, it wasn't a conscious thing. I mean, I
Mm,
got asked to write that book, so it's not like I wrote the book and then was looking for a publisher. A publisher
mm,
found me and then, was encouraging me to write it. Um, it wasn't ghost written. I'm always amazed by that because I'm still quite naive about that. I mean, I know nothing about publishing, right? I now
mm,
know a little bit more, but not a whole lot more. And to me, it's like I didn't realize that you could have a book ghost written and it doesn't say so on the cover. Like that seems illegal to me.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
It should
do you
be.
know what
It
I
should
mean?
be.
It wouldn't it,
Yeah.
if you have an album, it's got to say who's the vocalist and whatever.
So
You
you'd
can't just
think. Yeah.
lie,
No.
right? I can't just put vocals by,
And
you
it's
know,
written in the first
Liz
person as well.
Fraser.
They do, right? They write it in the first person as well. Yeah.
I just think that's trades description, isn't it? It's like
But you can
outrageous.
tell. I mean, I read a lot of rock biographies. You can tell immediately. You can. Yeah.
But wouldn't you, if I had a book ghost written, I would want that on the cover because I
Right.
wouldn't want then someone to go, oh, you said
Sure.
that, and it's actually
Right.
a bit contentious.
Sure.
And
Sure. Sure.
I could back off and go, well, you'll have to talk to the ghostwriter about that. It's nothing
Sure.
to do with me,
Sure.
right? Plausible deniability, you know what I mean? But I think, so yeah, I think I just started writing it, and the reason the first section is so long is because I started at the beginning, and then I got really, really into writing about all the childhood stuff. I'm
Mm,
not going to lie, I was probably dreading the band stuff a bit
mm,
because, no longer being friends with Emma and with Phil, we don't
mm.
talk to each other, and
Still
that was
now?
always still now. So
Mm,
that was always going to be a bit of a minefield, because
mm,
you're talking about someone who you feel, I was very bruised by the end of Lush after the
mm,
Reformation and the way we fell
mm,
out. And I did feel really hurt. And I just, and I needed to be able to write about those early years of Lush without having that interfering because I wanted it to read, it's partly why I put it in the present tense because I wanted it to feel as it felt then,
mm,
not like really retrospective. I mean, it's impossible to not be somewhat retrospective and have some sort of framing, but I did want it to feel how it felt then, you know, throughout the whole book, so that the reader is on that kind of journey, you know. And it's not an overarching history. I mean, I cut loads out. There were loads of sort of significant inverted commas bits that probably Lush fans were like, oh, why didn't you write about that? And I was like, well, because it just was a bit boring. I wanted to write about the stuff that, you know, made it a bit of a page turner and made it interesting.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I loved it. Your mum sounds like an amazing person, just totally fearless, right? I mean, do you see kind of yourself in her, that side of her in yourself?
I mean, I think that with what do I think? Oh, I mean, I think both my mum and my dad were people of action. So I think that that was a real positive in my life. You know, there's a lot of people who will say, oh my God, your parents did this, your parents did that, you know, how terrible. And I get that. I mean, parenting is really bloody difficult anyway. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're never going to get it totally right. But I think it's about taking possibly the best of them. And yeah, I think that kind of grabbing opportunities, going with them, but with quite a positive attitude, having a certain, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of drive myself. I've never done a single thing that hasn't been either in collaboration with like a band, you know, or something that I've been asked and then prodded to do. You know, I would never have written a book off my own back, never. I wouldn't have formed MB3 if it hadn't been for, you know, the stuff that came before
That
it.
came out of the
So
book, right? That came out of the book.
exactly. Yeah. So because we were playing a handful of Lush songs at book events, me, Moose and Ollie, then it just sort of had a bit of momentum because we suddenly got offered gigs, and then we thought, well, if we're going to get offered gigs, I don't want to just play bloody Lush songs, so we need to write some songs, and then that's how that kind of
Wow.
started. So but that is a kind of grabbing an opportunity, you know. There's this sort of thing of like, you know, if a door opens, you know, how
Sure.
long do you think about rushing through it? And I tend to just go, all right, I'm just going to agree to do this because it's actually what will drive me to actually do something.
Sure. The sexual abuse stuff from your grandmother was very, very difficult to read about. Can't imagine what it was like to write about. I mean, I know you've been talking about it in interviews since the 90s, I think, but I mean, how was it to kind of see it, lay it out starkly like that? Did you have any reservations about that?
All the reservations I had were about how that would land. Right. So it wasn't, I mean, as you said, it's not something that's new. I have talked about it before. It was, to be honest, it was more about the responsibility of anyone reading it who, you know, had gone through that themselves, or even hadn't, but had a particular view of it. And I do remember sort of looking back to, you know, there was a point in the 90s where a lot of kind of abuse stories were kind of coming out in women in bands. And the way it was handled, I think, was really disingenuous a lot of the time. It was sensationalized. And I understand the need when you are a victim of abuse to actually massively paint yourself as the victim, because it's such an uncomfortable thing to have known that you've gone through and to talk about, that it is far better to paint yourself as just this sort of, you know, little lump that got manhandled. But the way that I wanted to write about it was about how it felt to me, how it affected me, not what they did necessarily, or do you know what I mean? That's always the narrative. It's the sort of, it's the abuser, it's the person who does that, and the exploration of why are they doing that and blah, blah, blah. It's very rarely an explanation of what it has done to that person, how it felt to them at the time. And it isn't, you know, being, I mean, it is for some people clearly being like, you know, kidnapped off a street and being, you know, put through all sorts of stuff. It's the kind of bland, domestic dullness of it that is the sort of really heartbreaking aspect. It becomes normalized. That's the problem, right? It's not that you are, you know, suddenly this sort of person who's had this, you know, terrible experience and it's written all over you, and you are this sort of changed person, and you can talk about how you got beaten up or attacked, or it's one of these things. It's all inside and it's all hidden, and it changes your behavior in ways that you don't understand, and that's actually the real harm of it. And it's kind of the part I want it to get across without dwelling too much on the gory details, because I just don't think that really helps anyone.
I think you did it very, very well. Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions. From all of the music you've done in your life, the Lush, whatever, Piroshka, MB3 are we calling it? I like that. MB3. Do you have a favorite song or a favorite album of anything that you've worked on?
No, not really. I don't have the objectivity to be able to sit down and listen to one of our albums and listen to it purely as music. First of all I can hear is the problems. I go, here comes the bit that I should have changed. I knew I should have done that backing vocal in that bit. So it's just, that's the experience. There's times when I kind of hear something when I'm not expecting it, and I think, oh God, that actually sounds all right. But I just, you know, or I look at songs that I like playing live. So it's always through a filter. I can't just sit there and go, yes, that's my favorite album. You know, there's lots of stuff I like. There's lots of stuff I don't like, you know, but with it comes the whole story of where it came from, why it ended up how it is, you know.
That's fine. That's fine. All right, final question, and we ask every band member that we interview the same question, and it's which other band from the 90s would you have liked to have been in, and why?
None of them. You know, because again, right, this is the thing where do you know what? I think I did put this in the book towards my Britpop rant, right? Now, Pulp is a band I absolutely loved, right? And I went to see them before they hit their huge heights, you know, and I genuinely loved them. And I remember reading in Russell's book, so he wrote a book, and there was a very, very lovely kind of last chapter in it that's about Chris. And it's really, really sweet. But there's a little bit in it where he sort of goes on about like, oh, poor Chris, stuck in that band Lush. I think it was really hard for him to see, you know, bands like us, you know, make it and be successful. And I just thought, fuck off, right? You know, like that is so arrogant. I know full well all the shitty elements of all of those bands, the bickering, the chippiness, the singer's getting too much attention. Pick a band, any band, right? They've all got that shit going on. So wanting to be in another band, like, yes, you can sit there and go like, I wouldn't have minded their record sales and their, you know, PRS statements or whatever. But you then have to put up with all the other shit that they go through, right?
Yeah.
And no, thank you. I have my own shit to deal with, and that was perfectly fine. Also, there's not any narrative where I would not have wanted to be in a band with Chris. That is the crowning sort of wonderfulness of my Lush years, is to have spent that amount of time with him. So no, I wouldn't want to be in any other band.
That's a great answer. All right, thank you very much. Where's the best place for people to keep up with, like, if the album comes out or tours or anything? What's social media?
We've got a website. We've got a mikistuff.com website, but it's all social media. You know, I have to tiresomely post all this crap on, you know, Twitter and Blue Sky and Facebook. I haven't got onto TikTok. That's just one step too far.
Don't do it. It is. You've got to draw a line somewhere. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to
No,
start doing
no.
dances to my own
No.
tracks, posting them online. So sorry.
All right. Thank you very much for being so generous with your time. That was great. Thank you.
No problem. Thank
I'm
you.
gonna
So there we go. Miki Berenyi from Lush. I loved that one. I really enjoyed it.
Covered a lot of ground in that.
Oh, we did. She's so kind of natural and down to earth and funny and just this totally
Bit like me.
authentic person, right?
Bit
Oh,
like
for
me.
fuck's sake, she's nothing like you. You're none of those things.
No,
I
she
mean,
was
she made
brilliant.
my job very
She was
easy in
brilliant.
that because she's so nice. Yeah, I like
It's
the
the first
nostalgia
time-
stuff as well. Go on, Dave.
Yeah. It's the first time I've ever thought actually vaping looks quite good.
Oh, it did look good. She made it look
She
cool.
made it look cool, didn't she?
First person, yeah.
Sure.
That's what I thought as well. And it rarely
Better than
looks cool.
smoking.
Yeah. God, I don't think I could pull it off. But I sat here doing that. Don't know.
Try.
Yeah, I like the nostalgia aspect of the interview as well.
It was better back then, kind of stuff. It's perfect for the podcast, right? Loved it.
Did people used to go to gigs all the time in the 90s, or did we just go to more gigs because we were younger? I mean, I start to go to more gigs now, but did people just generally go to more gigs? I guess
I was thinking
People
about that.
didn't.
She was
No, young
she was
people.
growing up in London. You know, that must
Exactly.
have been. You can get anywhere in London easily on the transport and stuff.
Yeah.
So it must have been the best place to grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do people still do that, but we just don't really know about it or follow it, or just more people?
Yeah,
just
young
go out?
people.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they do. Probably not as much.
Not
I don't
sure
think
they do.
they're doing it as much. I mean, the gig Neil and I went to the other week in the 90s, that would have been filled with young people.
Mm. Ah,
Now it's filled
Luke,
with the
stop
same
rubbing
people,
yourself.
30 years older.
sorry.
I think maybe it was a bit more spontaneous back then because it was cheap. Like you have to plan to go out these days, don't you? Because of the costs involved and stuff.
You probably have
I
to
don't know.
fucking download an app to get in
Probably.
the door these days.
Well, yeah, you probably do, and all of that sort of stuff.
But when
Plus
we
it's-
went, it wasn't expensive, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, although
Oh,
I need to correct myself.
12 quid.
I claimed that it was 12 quid for Nebworth. And
I
I need
got
to.
this here. I've got this here. Got this here. That's my next.
Yeah, I
question.
had
And
this
I-
note as well.
Are you sure
Okay.
you paid 12 quid?
No,
for a ticket?
I looked it up. In my mind, it was 12 quid. I remember the ticket, but I looked it up and it wasn't at all.
5.
No, it
35.
wasn't. It was
In the
22.50. It was
Oh, still
22.50. I
pretty
googled
Oh.
it. So that's where the 2 came from. In my mind, I can picture the ticket
Well,
I
you've made
thought
an
it was
idiot
12.
of yourself. You've made an idiot
in
of
front of
yourself.
Mickey. I know. It's embarrassing.
She would
It
have
is
thought
embarrassing.
that's bullshit as you said it, but
Yeah.
was too polite to say anything.
She was too polite to correct me, wasn't she?
You're going to
I
interview
know.
people on the podcast. At least get your facts fucking straight.
I apologise, Mickey, and
Well, you
I
let
tender
yourself-
my resignation.
You let yourself down again, haven't you?
But 22.50 for fucking Nebworth.
Yeah, it's
That is
still pretty good.
insanely cheap. Yeah.
That's nuts, isn't it? And it was like
It's nuts.
an all day thing, wasn't it? There's about
Yeah.
7 bands on or something.
Yeah, good value.
Yeah, what would that be now? I reckon. Well, I don't know how much your races tickets are going for now. But how
Oh,
much do you
God
think a
knows.
Nebworth ticket, if you used inflation, would be now?
Well, with inflation,
Well-
it should be about 50 quid, but it would
Right.
be about 100 to 200 quid.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah. So
Easy.
22.50 then is like 50 quid now, you're saying?
I think so.
Has inflation gone up that much?
Yeah.
Huh.
Mm.
Look at use the
30
price of a
years.
pint to guide you.
But that's not a good. That's not a good measure, is it? Because that's just gone up.
I think a
Exponentially.
pint is quite a good
I measure
measure.
everything in pints.
Yeah.
You don't even drink.
No, pint's a good one because it involves people to pour the pint and the actual
Right.
materials
It
as well.
incorporates everything into the cost.
Mm.
Yeah. Whereas you look at a TV, say, that hasn't gone up at all
Yeah. It's gone
because that's
down. if
made by
anything.
robots.
Well, that was an interesting curveball. That's not right. The word.
I used to like a good
Oh,
game of
fucking hell.
curveball, though, man. Keep it in. Used to play that outside
Curveball.
my house, curveball. Brilliant.
Yeah, I liked because when she spoke about MB3, as we call them, they're kind of doing it backwards, aren't they? So they're like touring, building an audience, and then releasing music afterwards. So they
Doing it the
enjoying
old way.
music, and then I like that.
Yeah, just leaving it to the last minute to make it last as long as possible, basically.
Yeah, and there's no pressure, is there? They're just enjoying themselves. She kind of spoke about how there's just too much music now anyway, like because you can self-record and self-release everything, it's just saturated in it. So playing live becomes more important, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, there's all these statistics, isn't there? Like, the same amount of music released in 1 week today is the same as like the whole of 97 or something like that, right? There's all these kind of statistics.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
But people just sitting in their rooms making music all the time. So
I really like she was talking about the indie community and the gig community as a safe space, and the fact that everyone's part of it. It was being a music fan wasn't a passive thing. It was an active. It was a participation sport. You know what I mean? Everyone was doing something, and that was cool as fuck, man. It's great.
Yeah, the digital age has killed all of that, hasn't it?
Is it the digital age that's killed it? I don't know.
I think so.
I don't know.
You don't really need to have friends anymore, not real ones. You can just have them online if you want.
They're still friends.
Yeah, but you never have to see them or anything. But yeah, that London gigging scene sounded good, didn't it? David touched on it earlier.
Yeah, brilliant.
It must have been a great time to be, well, alive and in London.
Yeah, that time and the 20 years previous as well. That whole Simon Raymond was talking about it, and he was
and the punk guy was 10 years before
earlier,
Miki,
wasn't
but
he?
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I'm not a London person, but even I'd have enjoyed that, I think. I don't know, I just measure everything in pints.
Fuck's sake.
I was just, when she was talking about the crushes she and her friends had on band members and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, go on, what was yours,
crushes. Dave? Well, maybe Sunita.
Oh, good
one.
one.
Good one.
No, but
it's
different for boys and girls, isn't it? We were just idolising, because most of the bands we were following were male, right? I mean, they just were. But we don't, I didn't have crushes on them.
Really?
What about you? You idolise them, but it's a completely different dynamic, isn't it?
But what's the difference?
One's sexual, isn't it? And one
but they're good looking, right? See, someone mentioned it on the Facebook page the other day. Mine was probably Shakin' Stevens. And I think that was probably a crush.
You're obsessed with Shakin' Stevens.
I love it's more Wales for you, Dave, for today's episode. It's more Welsh people. The Welsh Elvis.
Fan. You've spoken more about Shakin' Stevens than anything else on this podcast.
Don't say that. I might just cry. I might cry just a little bit.
I just measure
reference there. Yeah. I think that was probably a crush. He looked good. I think that probably was.
Don't share that crush.
Stevens. He still looks all right.
Maybe Nick Kershaw.
Maybe I shouldn't have shared that.
Nick Kershaw perhaps is an equivalent.
Nick
maybe
Kershaw's good.
Oh man, he's
I
a good looking guy.
I looked at his hair and thought I wanted that haircut.
It was the washing machine guy.
Nick Kamen.
He did something, didn't he?
Yeah.
He released something.
Who did Wouldn't It Be Good? Is that Nick Kershaw?
That's Nick Kershaw.
That's Nick Kershaw, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great song. And the riddle.
It's a good song.
That's a great song.
Yeah.
But
I would call them. I would just call them crushes. It's okay. It's okay to admit it. There was something sexual about it. It's fine.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm going to admit there was something sexual.
Okay, you stay in denial. It's all right. Go on.
Not in denial.
Let's move on. But it's ridiculous. Like people say, like it's a man crush. It's just a crush. It's okay to find other men good looking. It doesn't make you gay. You just understand that they're good looking, right? It's a man bag. It's just a bag, but you like having a bag. It's just a fucking bag. It's just a ridiculous kind of prefix people put on because they don't want to be seen as gay. It's fucking ridiculous, and it pisses me off. Rant over.
Yeah, there's Luke's little.
It's true though.
A chat on playing guitar badly and it being like a badge of honour. But I think I
don't
tend to
bring
think
up Main Street again.
No. But I do think that she didn't play guitar badly, and I think that always comes from a position of what's it called? See, when the words aren't there when I need them.
You can do it.
When you
Position of
undervalue
what?
yourself. When you undervalue yourself.
Right.
Inferiority complex.
Inferiority
No,
complex.
not that.
Like imposter syndrome.
No, when you were less than what you.
Low self-esteem.
Oh,
No.
like you're kind of being humble, you mean?
Yes.
You're
that's-
kind of
that's
self-deprecating.
that sort of thing. Yeah.
Not self-defecating. That's what you do. Self-deprecating.
But yeah, I guess it does force you to play music differently if you're not putting in like intricate guitar solos and stuff. That's what she was saying. You have to make the music more interesting in other ways. That's where all the distortion and stuff comes in, isn't it?
In music, it doesn't. You can do some of the best songs are really simple.
Oh yeah, most of them.
It's just one of the beauties of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I was thinking when she was talking about that stress experience in the guitar shop.
Yeah.
That was horrible.
We all felt that, right? It's not just a female thing, is it?
We
Yeah,
did.
well,
I
you would
felt
say
like
that.
that when I was in
It's
a
in
guitar
a different
shop.
way, though.
Yeah.
But is it though?
Yeah, of course it is.
Come
That
on, look,
feeling
you
of
can go
being
off on another rant
intimidated
now.
by the
He's
the
in an
people in the
element
shop.
here.
No. Well, of course it's different. It's different reasons, isn't it?
I don't know if it is different.
Well, it is. But you've never been dismissed because of your gender immediately.
Nor have you.
I have.
You've never been followed around a supermarket because of the color of your skin. It's you're speaking from a place of privilege. It's bullshit. Fuck.
No, but
I came to agree with Luke on
it's
this
palpable in those shops. That feeling that she felt. I mean, I felt this. I felt that feeling.
Sure, but it's for a different reason, isn't it?
Yeah, she'd have felt that, but mixed with the fact
Yeah.
that she was a woman as well, so she'd have doubled
Yeah,
up on it.
But
And
the
not
thing
given a
that's
chance.
similar, the thing that's similar is my wife is Swedish, and all the time when we're watching TV in English, she thinks like she hasn't understood it because she's Swedish. So she doesn't. She asked me what was said, and I haven't got a clue either.
Right. Yeah. That's a common phenomena.
Yeah.
For
You think
non-native
because
speakers.
you're in this position, you're
Yeah.
experiencing it differently, but actually you're not.
But that's completely nothing to do with systemic misogyny or sexism, is it? It's a completely different point.
But no, but there's definitely misogyny and sexism.
Yeah, but the people speaking on the film are not. They're it's not a two-way. It's just a one-way thing. They don't know who's watching, right? So they're not judging you when they're speaking in quickly. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that is the same.
But you're dismissing. You're totally dismissing her experience and saying that we all feel it, and she's no different.
I'm not dismissing her experience.
You are.
But I'm saying
you completely are. You just did.
I'm not. You're putting words into my mouth.
No, I'm not. You're saying we've all felt it, but you haven't because you haven't experienced it because you haven't experienced it as a woman.
No, I haven't experienced how it feels to be a woman, but you all feel you feel the
Yes, but it's not the same.
But the feeling when you're in like a guitar shop,
yeah,
and you feel like everyone else thinks you're shit.
We've had that.
Yeah, sure.
That's
but
not
that's
a
not the
uniquely female thing.
No, but it's felt in a different way.
It's a bit like when you're in a garage and you have to deal with the guys that are going to fix your car. That feeling of complete inadequacy because you haven't got a clue how to fix the car, and you just think,
but the difference is that they give you a chance.
Yeah.
Until you actually open your mouth or not, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
That's true. Yeah, that's definitely true.
That's
they haven't
the difference,
automatically formed a narrative before you.
Exactly.
Although
if you're walking in that fucking jerkin, they might do.
To be fair, you probably did feel similar because you would have got judged straight away looking like you do.
Yeah, but it's but it's like that for non-blokey blokes, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
It's horrible, though, isn't it? It did sound horrible.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed your chat about the difference between the UK and the US music press. Everything's different, really, though, isn't it? Although we share a similar language, the UK and the US are just completely different.
I think I read about that in that Brimville of Asia book. I think that's where I got that from. So I think it maybe it was like Jinder from Corner Shop talking about it. It's talking about how like they were taken seriously in the US because they come out every month and they listen to the albums lots of times and they think about it seriously and they review them on the music. But with like in the UK, it's just like burning Morrissey picture next, whatever scandal they can think up without talking about the music.
Yeah, it definitely rings true, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening over there at the moment. No one does.
Oh, let's not.
The bit about Britpop and her dislike for it and all of that.
Yeah.
But I distinctly remember that Liam Gallagher did an interview. And in the interview, he said he was just talking about Britpop bands. He's just talking about Oasis. And he said, yeah, we're not afraid to say that we want to be the biggest rock band in the world and stuff. So there was a change. Yeah,
but it wasn't just ambition, it was a sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
I was trying to get a good thing to read about this from the book, which is saying like,
why haven't you got little markers in there?
I do.
But the big thing was when she said it was shallow. I thought that summed it up. Just completely shallow, unpolitical, unprincipled.
Yes. Everyone trying to be number one, Yeah, like the Smash T-shirt, not your star fucker, man. Just trying to be those kind of fucking shallow star fucking idiots. Do you know what I mean? Okay, this is what she said. She's about Britpop. She said, "We're friends you haven't seen in months." This is what happened to the scene, basically. "We're friends you haven't seen in months. Act like you're a random stranger to ponce drugs from, and musicians treat other musicians like handmade groupies, where someone whose only claim to fame is designing a T-shirt swans around oozing celebrity entitlement, and every no-mark hanger-on acts like they're Johnny fucking Rotten. I mean, what the fuck is going on?" Is what she said about Britpop, and that's a pretty good summary, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of ligging going on, and like she was talking about the creatives and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of people
and comparing it with the scene that she came out of. We're getting this a lot, right? We talk to like the Grebo boys, and we get this kind of sense of a supportive scene and the camaraderie that she talked about in the pre-Britpop scene and the shoegaze scene just completely disappeared with Britpop when I guess when the money came in, right?
It got really corporate, isn't it?
Yeah,
a bit like when you work for a small company and it gets bigger. It's just that when a small group gets too big, right? You lose personal connections that you had before.
But it wasn't even that big. They were, like she says, every fucking no-mark was acting like they're fucking Mick Jagger. Do you know what I mean? Just because they were mentioned in the NME. It's nonsense, right?
Yeah, looking back on it, I guess. I mean, I'm not gonna completely slate Britpop because I enjoyed a lot of the music.
Oh man, I love the music, but I'm not liking. The more I'm learning about it from our interviews, I'm not liking what I'm hearing about the scene. But I still love the music.
No, well, the whole scene was sort of. It kind of went hand in hand with the whole Lad Mag scene, didn't it? It was very much that sort of. It was that whole thing.
Just wasn't a scene, was it?
No, it wasn't. No, because for a scene's a community, right? And it wasn't a community. They were trying to fuck each other over.
Yeah, it was a funny old time. Good. I remember it being really good, but I guess I was just having a good time.
Yeah,
I measure my stuff in pints.
Pints of milk.
What's that mean?
What do you think about her formula for writing a hit song? You can do this, Neil. Take it and
I've done it.
Get in the chart. God. So put the title of the song in the chorus. Hand claps. Ooh, backing vocals.
No, we have done that and that.
Punctuate in hooks, like here comes the next one. I didn't think about that, right? You're telling them what's going to happen, right? It's great.
I've written many hit tunes. They just haven't been listened to by anyone.
Sure.
No, it was good. It's always interesting to hear how they write songs. I like that.
Yeah, I do like stuff like that. I really like that the story of the Doctor Who and the TARDIS.
Oh yeah.
Well, they wrote a book first, didn't they? How to have a #1 single, and then they used the book to have
Oh,
a
right.
#1 single.
Sure.
KLF, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not sure that necessarily is a formula, though. You do still need a little bit of luck.
Yeah, and
And
that
talent.
was like a piece of art in
talent.
itself, right? The idea that you
Sure.
could write a book that tell you how to write a song and then have one. That entire thing is the piece of art.
That's
Yeah.
the art. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
I liked it. I like the questions you're asking and how you got her to explain exactly what the Ladykiller character was.
Mm.
But I just thought, it would be nice at some point just to experience being that kind of person.
That kind of guy.
That kind of guy.
Oh, do it, man. Just do it.
Well,
What
come
kind
on.
of guy?
Yeah, you can.
Just haven't got
put
the
on
charisma.
You don't need just do it. Do a fake charisma. Just do it. Yeah.
Anyway, I can't now. I'm married.
It doesn't
I'm
matter.
old.
You have to. You can just do it.
What's it matters?
Let's go out to a pub.
Try it on Victoria.
Don't have to actually do anything. You just do the charisma part, and then you walk away. You don't have to. You're not going to. You don't have to cheat.
No, I was talking about actually doing the things as well.
Oh, actually, you can do. Oh, right. But
No,
she'll
not
understand.
really.
Just explain to her the reason behind it. She'll understand.
Yeah, it's an experiment.
Exactly. If she really loved you, she wouldn't mind.
But when I was at uni, I had a friend that he was probably with a different person every week.
Yeah.
But I do remember how depressed he got,
Shallow.
and I was kind of envious of him in a way. But
no, it's an empty.
it is an
existence, I'm
empty
sure.
thing, isn't it? If you can, you just have endless string of shags.
Well,
really.
you detach.
I mean,
you detach the whole.
It's not sounding too
detached.
bad, to be honest. But go on.
There's no emotion or attachment, is there? That you lose all that. But yeah, why not? If that's what you're into.
Sure.
But that's the point. It didn't have a happy ending
What happened to him?
for that guy. Well, hopefully he's fine now. I've lost touch, but he had problems.
But it's interesting, like in the book, she talks about like meeting Anthony Kiedis and stuff, and she said, he wasn't a bad guy. He was just a bit of a twat. I think her exact words. It's just a bit of a twat. That was it. And I guess there's a lot of guys like that, right?
Yeah, I guess it's yeah, I guess.
It never occurred to me how different the actual background of the people were between the Chili's and the Seattle bands.
Oh yeah. Oh, completely. Yeah.
Yeah, it just hadn't occurred to me before. They're just all Americans to me,
Right. I think her answer to our usual question was particularly lovely and poignant. She said she wouldn't have wanted to have been in any band without Chris, which was a really, really nice answer, right? It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I look back over a lot of the old Lush photos and stuff, and it is a lot of them are just her and Chris.
Yeah.
To have a really nice friendship.
Yeah, they met at college, and I think they were best mates. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sad, man. Yeah, fucking waste, isn't it? That's it for this one. Thanks so much, Mickey, for coming on. Really enjoyed that one.
And everyone, buy Mickey's book. You won't regret it. It's great.
There you go. Buy Mickey's book. You won't regret it. If they do, then will you refund them?
Yeah, because they won't.
Right. Okay. Fine.
Yeah.
So do that. If you are watching this, then please do subscribe to our channel. Help us get to that 1,000 mark. And leave a comment below. Let us know your favourite Lush songs, memories, gigs, all that sort of stuff. And if you are listening, then please do rate and review and share it with your friends. It's the best way to help us out with the podcast. Share it with your friends so that they can have a listen and find us.
If you're new to the podcast, welcome aboard. We got 81 other episodes. So, for example, if you're into the Cocteau Twins, we interviewed Simon Raymond from the Cocteau Twins recently, so have a listen to that in the archive. And also we produce a mixtape for every episode on Spotify. So loads of shoegaze, loads of Lush, bit of hard skin, and all kinds of good stuff will be in there. So have a listen to that.
Join us next week for episode 83 of the Stupid and Contagious podcast. Dave?
See you in a minute.